Hey everybody, Dan here for Argo Comics. We have our indie monster haul. Um, I seem to see on the internet that there are no new comics being produced right now. So there are no new comics. And yet, here we got this indie haul. Uh, I guess back in the day, there used to be the term Marvel Zombie. And to some degree, there's almost like a diamond zombie or something, in the fact that there are people who believe that if it's not in previews, it doesn't exist. I think for a long time, Overstreet, the price guide, only listed books from uh, mainstream distribution, and as there's evidence, I mean, there are comics being produced. In actuality, the little break, perhaps, from the flood of books that come out, which, again, I have nothing against. I enjoy many of them. I was a Wednesday Warrior. Uh, wow, it must have been like for 30 years or something, I guess. I mean, just going every Wednesday, picking up the new titles. Uh, I love a lot of those creations, those creators, but I think there has to be an acknowledgement, especially, there are books and Kickstarter that's outsold mainstream distribution. There's books just probably through conventions that have done so. I think it's a mistake when we try to just, focus on one form of distribution when so many more exist these days. Um, so let us get into some of those books. Uh, in fairness, these first three are back issues, um, but beyond them, I have a whole slew of new books, despite the fact that, like I said, some mainstream creators said there are no new comics now um, coming out. All right, so I've been showing copies of YEET, and these are some back issues that they usually didn't have many back issues available. They came up with some in their stock. So this was actually issue 18. These is now in the 30s. Uh, let's see. And this featured Black Fury, which is one of the mainstay heroes of YEET. There was a flip book as usual. Old guys who like old comics. That's kind of their slogan. Um, and I did not get to read all of these as of yet. We do start out with a Black Fury story. As you know, I like to give you a little preview of the art so people know what they want to track down, what they do not. So we had a big Black Fury story in the back, or, well, depending on the flip book. So either one could be the front and the back, I guess. And we had another story on this side of the book. Seeing if it'll focus in. And it'll not. Compumech rather. So that's another hero in the back here. Okay, so I found the issues to be enjoyable, which is why I kicked into the back issues. Um, this is a pretty funny story. I believe it's well, actually, here they did a relettering of the Charles Atlas ad, which some may recall in my own Argo 5 comic, and I had my own Charles Atlas ad because we have a kind of a bodybuilding journal that I produced in comic book form. So I made my own Charles Atlas ad with a convention adventure. This is a relettering of the original ad, and this story is a relettering of an old romance comic, but the problem being that the guy has too many back issues. So they relettered this story, and it's about that. It's quite humorous. Let's see. And we have Guardians Blue, which I think ran in a few issues. Seems like it was a Guardians Blue super team. So that really had me interested. But I don't believe, oh, these may be the characters for Guardian Blue right here. So I'll be interested to read more of that. Guardians Blue. And I think that brought us up. And there was a comic, Selkie. Oops. Flipping open. Selkie was another feature here. And then we had the letters column. So that was 18. We had issue 25. Okay, that actually, okay, a lot of times they've been using like public domain characters. Like here's Wonder Man, the original one, Firefly. And this is War Eagle, which I'm guessing is a public domain. Kind of reminds me of American Eagle, who's probably inspired by War Eagle, I'm guessing. American Eagle from Super Mansion, the show that was kind of like a spin-off of Robot Chicken, if anyone saw that. Very funny stuff. Really hoping for new episodes of that. But yeah, this American Eagle looks a bit like that. I mean, War Eagle looks a bit like American Eagle. But I'm sure, like I said, if this is one of the public domain characters, I'm sure this predates it. And yeah, usually I go over a little more in depth the YEET issues as they're new issues, and I'm giving feedback since these are back issues up, and we have another on the back. Okay, we have another, as I was mentioning, Guardian Blue, Chapter 2. So that was 18, and this says number 25, and it's Chapter 2. I don't know if I'm sure they appeared in issues in between, but I'll read it and I'll find out. Then we had this Ubasudi story, which kind of looked similar in art style to that other story in 18. I'm not sure if that's the same artist or not. Let's go into number 26. Okay, and this one, Journey into YEET. Sometimes they do that with the title. Black Fury. Arvell Jones did the cover here, and it's kind of like it's a gatefold cover, but it doesn't fold out. It's a big, impressive illustration. Yeah, Arvell Jones did the interior art also. Really great artist. For those who prefer black and whites. Sometimes YEET is in color, but majority of it is in black and white. And actually, at one point I had said Black Terror by mistake instead of Black Fury. They almost address that in this little scene here where they're talking about heroes with skull and crossbones on their chest. Black Fury, Black Terror, Destroyer has a skull. So it's an interesting thing. Actually, Antarctic Press had Captain Harlock at one point, and that was another. He was a space pirate, and he had skull and crossbones. Let's see here. Yeah, William Mesner Loebs has a Wolverine McAllister chapter in this issue as well. Okay, I think I've compared his style before to Will Eisner, to both Williams, so go figure that. And let's see. The flip book on this one was Storm Owl, which I gave my thoughts on that being a good story. And I'm not sure if this was actually, because this may have been the first chapter reprinted later on in YEET again. Because again, I haven't read it, but I think this looked like the same. But very nice art. Storm Owl seems to be an interesting character. Having read the other story, it's like a brother and sister come upon, I guess, a lair that the original Storm Owl had, and the brother goes into a suit. Sister's talking to him through a radio transmission, and they become kind of a crime-fighting duo. So let's see. Yep, and that was that part of the flip book. So now we get into the new releases that don't exist according to some internet pundits. Okay, this was through Kickstarter. The Nefarious Smiths. I had a trade paperback in another indie monster haul, and they actually didn't have this book ready yet, so they did mail the trade, and the Smiths 2019 annual. I give them credit for mailing the trade and then mailing this on their own dime. It seems like a lot of Kickstarter creators, they just seem fine with a 2-year wait and hardly any updates and just making you wait, being that you have no choice. I really think that's a mistake for creators. It builds up ill will. I mean, no one wants that on their mind each time they're going through their list of stuff they backed, seeing that book from 1 year, 2 years ago, still not checked off as received. Here's someone. Let's make sure to give credit to AB312C Entertainment for saying we're not going to make people wait for the trade because this book is not ready. This is the annual. That's what this is. Smith's annual. Okay? We're not going to make people wait. What we're going to do is we're going to mail out the trade, and then we will mail out this issue, which wasn't really that long of a gap. That's a creator, Doug, who's in charge. Okay, these are the creators of the book. Doug said, I'm not going to wait to mail out the trade for this book. He mailed out everyone's trade, then he mailed out this book, and still well within a reasonable amount of time after backing the campaign. I saw one creator who was like, well, you're waiting for it. I have some pinups coming in. They're free, So what are you going to do? We got to wait for them. When it's free, you get them when you get them. Now, as a person who gave money to the campaign, okay, the book isn't free for me. That doesn't really sit well because, okay, so just so that you're not having an expense of getting pinups, which all my pinups, every Argo comics you get has a pinup section. Uh, those aren't free. The artist paid, the colorist is paid, and you know, to say that I have your money and I'm not going to pay anyone for pinups, or this creator being an artist himself, doing pinups himself, I'm going to just, sit back and wait. And you guys will get the book when you get the book. Um, like I said, it gives you a pause as to whether or not you're going to back that creator again. Um, so this Smith's Annual, okay, introduced this character. I'm not even sure her name because this is her first appearance. I'm not going to bore everyone looking for it, but it's a feline character. I really like the look of that character. It's a nice design. You can see that the art, colors, letters, all top notch. I will be looking forward to, I'm going to read the trade first because I'm guessing that's the order that they are intended. And that trade was like one or two Kickstarters, Kickstarter, one or two indie reviews back. But again, I do like the look of this book. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, issue 4 of the Smiths was in the trade, but he might have just chucked this in for the weight, which is, again, a nice thing. Kind of a nice gesture on the part. He has a nice style. That panel kind of gives me a Humberto Ramos vibe. I think Doug's work might be a little influenced in that direction. But it's really quality stuff. So I will look forward to reading those books. Now we get into Indie Planet books. Okay? Oh, no comic books. No new comic books. Indie Planet every week is putting up new comic books. And just like ordering through a catalog or any subscription service, you can order a bunch of books, support a bunch of different indie creators, and save yourself on shipping. And these books are guaranteed, not like what I was talking about, where it's over a year later and the creator is hemming and hawing about sending you the book out. With Indie Planet, the files are there. So, I don't know. Some people like the drama of a Kickstarter and am I going to get my books and can I, uh, kind of flame them on their updates, like where the heck is it and all that. Maybe some people like the drama unfolding of whether or not they'll get their books. At Indie Planet, though, the files are there, or else if the book is not listed, you're going to order that book and you're going to get it in a very short amount of time. So speaking of those books, there's a whole bunch of them here. Indie Planet, The Accords, okay? Number 1 I got within a haul a few months back. Here's number 2. or initially caught my eye. Well, here's the creative team here. Tony Ortega is the writer. Art by Alex Garcia, who did a number of Argo 5 issues. So he had caught my eye with that as far as, yeah, he did Argo 5. I know 24 and 25 come to mind. More recent issue, perhaps like 31. But he's done a number. I have an upcoming cover with him in issue 41. Fantastic artist. But in addition, we have Luciano Vecchio, who is artist of the Sentinels, written by Rich Bernatovich, and he's actually, both of them are contributing a couple pages here. So that's really great to see. Rich does a lot of pinups. You don't see much in the way of sequentials from him, so he has a little peek into some sequentials. Luciano has done art for mainstream companies. I think he did Ironheart for Marvel, which was the Iron Man replacement for a while. So Alex Garcia, though, who I talked about, is just a phenomenal artist. Trying to get a little preview there. Stunning detail he infuses into his work. I always try to pick out stuff that's not too spoilery, but yeah, Alex is just a phenomenal artist. Super impressed with his work, which is why we continue to do Argo 5 issues. And the book is just, oh, here's something that Alex did actually for pinups in Pink Puma and Red Rooster. That's at the printer right now. Okay, in this book he also did it. Okay, especially when there's a live model, he'll kind of do like a portrait of them in an action shot and frame it just so. So this is one of the heroes from the Accords. He did that, and that's spectacular work. Let's see. It's actually the cover, though, is Luciano. I recognize the art style. Great, great stuff. Also, Indie Planet. We have the Formidables, okay? Number 6. Oniric Comics. Okay, Chris Malgrain is the driving force behind Oniric. He's actually a writer-artist of the Formidables. And I guess I will categorize it in kind of like a John Byrne sort of feel to the work. You know, you're going to get nothing but the top level of art, colors, and lettering in his books. Which is a really, really great work. Formidables also, it's almost like a Marvel comic, but skewed in a unique voice. So it's. I always say that with indie comics, you have to do a book that isn't being done by the big two, if you're going to do superheroes especially, because those books are already out there. So your tributes of those books and stories is really just a, you know, perhaps a dumbed down version of those books that are already out there. If you're putting out a book that could be put out by the big two, then you're probably wasting your time. There should be something unique and something different about your book, and Formidables delivers on that. Okay, and we actually have the art of Chris Malgray, #2, and this was an extensive look at his pencils and inks. So you get to see the stages of his work, Chris's work. Let's see. Advent comics. We had Blackfire #1. Okay. Tony Cottrell is the creator of Advent. Here's a little ad for Advent. History in the Making, Advent Comics. Spoiler alert, in Argo 5, issue 37, which is at the printer, just waiting for the book to be listed. We do have some Advent guest stars. Myself and Tony had arranged a little trade, so you should be seeing Argo 5 somewhere in the Cosmos storyline, and you will be seeing characters of his in Argo 5 #37. So I am getting my half of the cross promotion taken care of, just in time for the Advent Comics 10th anniversary. So Argo Comics is celebrating Advent's 10th anniversary with a guest starring role with an Advent team of heroes, which I don't want to give away. We'll have you surprised for the Advent fans who will recognize which team of heroes it is. Here's an ad for Titan, another book that Advent puts out. And I will say that, okay, here's actually some credits. Tony Cottrell, writer. Florentino Suevis, pencils. J. Brown says finishes, but I'm going to go, finishes are usually inks over layouts, but I'm going to guess he's colors, because the book's in color and it's not inked. So I'm going to say that he's probably, J. Brown's probably the colorist, or maybe he did some digital manipulation of the pencils, so they put finishes. And Lucas Gaftoni does the letters. As far as the finishes are concerned, I'll say that I'm not a big fan of pencils to colors. I'll see if we have an example of why I am not. I think just the inked work looks a little sharper. I don't even know if this will show up because there's not much lighting. The blacks on a pencils to color book just kind of look scratchy often. You know, like that. I mean, an inker would have done solid black on that. And, you know, it's a look that maybe some people appreciate. I just prefer a inked comic. And I actually was involved in a conversation on an online panel recently about, you know, the fact of you need an editor and, you know, whether or not comics need an editor. I believe they do need an editor, or at least a proofreader. But I said that with indie comics, okay, you have to kind of sometimes make the process run smoothly by tightening up the process. So in that, our letterer happens to be a writer, so he makes a good proofer and editor to some degree on the book. And I always like an artist who can be an inker, being that you really can't mail, it's cost prohibitive for the amount that an indie artist gets and the amount that we make on publishing. It's cost prohibitive to mail pages to a inker. Now, some might say, well, you can email the pages, which works fine if it's a digital inker, but if it is a traditional inker, more often than not, most people will not put 11 by 17 bristle paper into their printer to print these out in blue line, convert them to blue line, print them out, ink them on traditional boards. Often what will happen is if it's a traditional inker and you send a pen up to a traditional inker, they'll probably print it out on regular size paper. So now this 11 by 17 illustration or 10 by 15 illustration is inked at a 8 by 10, and you lose a lot of detail and quality of that illustration or a lot of the artist intent. And it's now you have an inferior product. So I'm not really a fan of sending art through email to get it inked. Again, a digital inker can pull that off. But most often, if you have an artist who's an inker, he might only go into kind of like a rough for himself and finish in inks because he knows his own intent. And it's just, again, being on a budget with indie comics, sometimes it pays to just have one less paycheck. If you do have someone who's teaming up with their own inker, then you could just pay the artist as per normal, and he can divide it up with him and the inker however he likes. But I do really think this is a great looking character. Very cool. Blackfire. And I'll look forward to more of that character and more of that book. We had this public domain fanzine. It's a new golden age. That looks like, what is his name? Dynamo from the, no, Dynamo's the other character. From, blanking out here. I'll come back to him. Here we have what we were talking about before, Black Terror. Okay, he's popped up a lot. I think Project Superpowers utilized him very well and might have caused a little bit of a resurgence in his popularity. Oh, I'm thinking of No Man. He looks a bit like from the Thunder Agents. No Man. Who they might be. Public domain. Silver Streak. I recognize him. That's probably the Fury on the bottom. Not sure what the other two, but public domain fanzine had a lot of articles about public domain characters, creators, Super Heresies, which was a Kickstarter I backed, which I actually have in the pile here. No mention of public domain character Nature Man, who Argo Comics, or Thunder Zone actually, or other imprint. No mention of that. We had mention of these books, Black Owl. What's the printer here? Again, I've ordered some from them. Atomic Pulp. Mention of Atomic Pulp. Mention of Gallant Comics I just saw. Gallant Comics. Yep, Thunder Zone, we put out public domain. Nature Man, built off of Nature Boy, which is funny. Maybe we did make some impression because we have this hide and seek ad for this hide and seek book, right? The Sensational Sentinels. Jeff Disher wrote this book, and in that, there's a little thing there of Nature Boy from the Nature Boy comics, but he is listed on this list as Nature Man. So maybe we did make some odd offhand cameo in this book that centered on, I mean, here's Lucky Comics, which I'll tell you, I'm hoping they put out some trades because as of right now, they kind of put out like 8-issue comics, which I can't really, I'm not really a big fan of an 8-issue. Probably even better as an anthology to have 3 8-issue, like I did with the Argo Comics anthology. Better to maybe have 3 8-issue. Ooh, here's a pinup mostly of Gilbert Monsanto art. Okay, we got Eric Bennett's Steel Wolf in there. Yeah, as I'm saying, better to perhaps have 3 8-issue stories in an anthology, have people get a full book rather than 8-issue comics. And there was more. There's another story that was presented in here. So, public domain fanzine. If you want to get the story of Nature Man and some other public domain characters that will appear in Nature Man, then you can call my agent and he'll arrange an interview in your publication. I might as well jump over. I'll skip over to Super Heresies since we just saw that in the public domain fanzine. Okay, so Super Heresies. It's Kickstarter. Okay, now this is not a comic-sized book. There's a comic-sized book. There's Super Heresies. Let me, so it's Super Heresies is almost like a magazine-sized book, perhaps. Just came with a little print here, Mystery Men Comics. And again, I think we're dealing mostly with public domain characters for Super Heresies, which is why it was included in the public domain fanzine. Duke of Darkness, I know. Yeah, Duke of Darkness. Duke of Darkness, King of Darkness, Dash, Dartwell, Miss Espionage, Ace, and Deuce. So, looks like they relettered an old ad as well, kind of like what we saw in YEET. And here is an example of the art style. It's kind of newsprint and made to look like an older comic in style, I believe. Whether intentional or not. I think there's a old villain from the public domain as well. I believe that's Duke of Darkness. Right there. So we have that book. I'll pick up the pace here a little. Big Bang Adventures #2, which has Mighty Man, which I believe is a Eric Larson creation in this one. Big Bang was in Image for a while. So you had a Mighty Man story, and there's a Thunder Girl story, talking about Thunder characters. Thunder Woman, Daniel Hoyne's character, Thunder Girl, and Big Bang, and I have a Thunder Man in Argo Comics. Just appeared in Argo 5 number 36. Again, these are all Indie Planet, so obviously they're new comics. Kill Switch number 1. Okay, I really love the cover of this. Kind of like an early Image type of design. The interior art, I'll give you a look at what to expect. Okay. And yeah, it reminded me of early Image. There's an interior cover. So, number 1, I figured, let me give this a look. And they have some ads here in the back for other books they have planned. Let me just see if the company is here. Wicked Comics. And another Indie Planet. Blue Moon Comics. Diversions. Okay, this was purely an art buy. I haven't read the story, so I can't be sure. I'm not going to say it's good or bad because I haven't read it. But when I saw the art, I said, yeah, there's a really great artist. Really love his style. Very clean. So I figured I'd give that a shot. A comedy book, and this is a little off-size also. Super Alien's pal, Timmy Olsen. I guess he's a reporter going undercover as a woman. But it seemed like they had just some fun parodies, kind of like Not Brand Eck used to have or something. Ratman by Dan Burke, it looks like, by Bob Kane. The same type of thing. And Journey into Misery with the God of Blunder, Thop. All right. So that looked pretty funny as well. Shield, G-Man fanzine, G-Man Club fanzine, issue 4. Okay, we must be associated with the other book we showed, because it has that same illustration with a bunch of artists, but mostly Gilbert. And we have some articles about, well, here's one, comic art commissions. Kevin Moorhead, who I see a lot online over on Facebook. Have a whole bunch of articles. Some about, here's one by an artist article, Kenny Clark. Just mostly about the S.H.I.E.L.D. characters. There was a big thing about, a big article about imaginary covers, which seems to be a popular thing. Okay, Jim Burroughs does this article about imaginary covers, which seems to be a popular thing to get commissioned. It's kind of like a Captain America homage. So, yeah, a lot of people like getting these homage covers done. But overall, yeah, it's basically a fanzine about the Red Circle characters. A little article about Fred Hembeck. He used to be a mainstay in the back of DC books. You can see his art style. That might ring a bell for you. So those were all Indie Planet. So my own Argo comics are there in Indie Planet. You know, it's like I said, it's no gamble. Like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which, you know, I'm there as well. It supports indie comics, but if you're a guy who, you know, wants the comics and wants them in a pretty quick manner, you want to get some reading done, especially if you're quarantined or something, Indie Planet's a great place to go. Now, talking of Kickstarter, we had Cybergirl Lita. Okay, back this one, Ducks Entertainment. Story and art by Jeff Brennan. Okay, so on that Kickstarter, you had issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, and issue 5 had a cover by my pal Denny Fink, who I met at conventions a while back. I've had a number of pinups from him in Argo Comics. Denny worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at one point, and I was happy to get this variant cover of Cybergirl Lita with his art. Now, Cybergirl Lita does have computer-generated artwork. Poser, they call it, poser artwork, which, you know, there's varying, just like with regular art, there's varying degrees of expertise in getting poser art done. And, you know, this book does it well. So I've yet to read the book. I won't make a judgment on the story. Again, it did look interesting from the Kickstarter explanation, story summation, and art examples. So I will be looking forward to giving this a read through. All right, so again, these are not really reviews. These are just my indie monster haul. Monster being that usually there's a lot of books because I try to support the indie comics community. Oh, forgot to show indie shirt here with the Herculoids. Those are some early indie heroes from back in the day. But that'll actually do it. You can please subscribe to our YouTube channel below. Check out Argo Comics, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all your social media. Just do a search for Argo Comics and we'll pop up. And we'll be back next month with another new stack of comics, perhaps with the mainstream distributor back online as well. So there'll be whatever indies we've been waiting for from them. All right, see you all later.